Alright, YouTube, it's time to talk about Obama's legacy. Of course, there's now a week and a day left until Trump is in and Obama's out. Technically a week, because the 20th itself kinda sorta doesn't count. It's the actual inauguration day. So I'd like to talk about my reading of what Obama did and did not accomplish over his 8 years. I think generally speaking it was a significant letdown. Of course, I voted for Obama in 2008, mainly, because at the time, young and dumb as I was, of course, I looked at what the Bushites had done, the Limitless Wars, Patriot Act, and so forth, pissing on foreign states left and right, alienating some of our allies in the process. I said, well, it's not the world I want to live in. It looks like things are getting worse and worse and worse, and towards the end, the economy begins to collapse. That was a little bit of a problem, too. So I said, well, John McCain basically sounds like Bush to me. And by the way, I don't regret voting for Obama, because looking at what McCain's doing now, McCain's so evil he even screws over fellow Republicans that have good ideas once in a while. So fuck John McCain. So I hope he doesn't get reelected. They should put him on the funny farm. But yeah, I voted for Obama in 2008. Didn't make that mistake again in 2012. Of course, Romney was no different, so I voted for Ron Paul. It didn't make any difference to me. My vote didn't matter at the time anyway. The state went like 68% for Obama. I think it only went 62% for Hillary Clinton. She lost a hell of a lot of support in most of New England, largely because of the drug shit going on here. That and maybe war, silent drone-based war. But Obama's been a letdown. One of the reasons that I supported him is that he seemed to be generally against, not completely, but generally against the surveillance apparatus and the sort of police state that the Patriot Act spawned. Instead, what we got under Snowden is the revelation that it actually had been vastly expanded. Now, Bush didn't implement it. It was sort of Bubba Bill ushered much of that in. Bush expanded upon it, made it more transparently there, and tried to pass it off as patriotism with his crap after 9/11. Obama realized it wasn't good for your approval rating if you were very open about the fact that you conducted a lot of surveillance, because people were starting to turn against the idea of limitless war and living in a totalitarian state, I suppose, in the name of so-called security. So he put it underground. He did the same thing with war. The wars that we've been engaged in have continued, and in fact, in some cases, grown and expanded. We committed acts of war in Libya. The ousting of Gaddafi with the no-fly zone that we ran was an act of war. Let's not kid ourselves about that. The fact that it went off without a hitch as far as what they wanted to accomplish, without us having to march in to do anything, Libya is arguably worse off than Iraq, where we did march in. We expended trillions of dollars, thousands of lives, and tens of thousands of civilians died. But they have a semi-functional government. You look at Libya, it's basically fallen apart completely. Large swaths of the country are controlled by ISIS. It's worse off than any other state other than Syria within the region. And that was Obama's doing. Obama with help from Hillary Clinton, of course, who was very, very happy that Gaddafi had been assassinated. Now Libya's a shithole. And that's Obama's fault. Obama destroyed Libya. Obama attempted to and was in a half-assed way successful at destroying Syria. Of course, he's glad that the FSA and ISIS control large parts of Syria. He's glad about that. He's glad that they've seeped over into Iraq. He's glad about it because he thinks somehow we're going to be able to control these groups. We made the same mistake back at the end of the 70s and the early 80s with the Mujahideen. We made the same mistake. We funneled weapons and money and all sorts of shit to a bunch of militants who at first, much like the FSA, people said, oh, well, they're kind of nationalistic, so they're just resisting Soviets. In this case, we said, oh, the FSA is like nationalistic and they're resisting this sort of Russian pawn. This same shit, different asshole, and it's not going to work. It makes the situation worse. We should have taken a hands-off approach and let Assad mop the floor of the FSA. There wouldn't even have been a Syrian civil war. There wouldn't be ISIS operating in that area. He would have killed them all by now. There wouldn't have been any attacks on civilians by anybody because the war wouldn't have raged long enough for that to be justified under anybody's possible conception of reality. So that's all Obama's doing. He's still a warmonger. It's just a silent war that involves drones and espionage more than marching in and laying waste to an area by repeatedly bombing it constantly. He's still pro-surveillance, pro-police state. He's just less open about that fact, tried to cover it up, was exposed, blamed Russia. Just as, in order to save his foundering legacy, he now says Russia's responsible for Trump winning, Russia's responsible for everything that happened to the Democratic Party. No, it's not. No, the Democratic Party is responsible for that. And the fact is, I haven't magically turned into a Republican by remarking upon this. I'm not. I'm never going to be a Republican or a Democrat or anything else under the sun. Partisan loyalty is retarded. I would have supported the Libertarian ticket if they had had the common sense to put somebody on that ticket who is capable of stringing more than 2 sentences together without making some major gaffe. Unfortunately, they decided to dig out the vaguely neoconservative so-called libertarian answer to Joe Biden and run him instead. Wonderful job. Great opportunity lost, by the way. You could have pulled into the double digits nationwide with a little bit more effort. Instead, you decided to get Bill Weld on board to embezzle millions of dollars from donors and give them the payback of, oh, we increased our vote share by like 2 million votes. Yay. We didn't break out of the single digits in most states, but hell, we did better than we did last time. Could have been a hell of a lot better than it was, by the way. So Obama's legacy is bullshit. I would rate his presidency a 2.5 out of 10, which is about the same as W. That is, it's been largely a failed presidency. Now, why would I not give him a 0 out of 10? Well, it's much like W. Bush. There were a few things that he did that made some sense. The Cuba deal? I have no problem with Cuba. I support ending the embargo. One of the things Trump has spoken of that I would most heavily oppose is trying to go back and bother renegotiating with a regime that fundamentally, while still technically under communism, is no longer capable of fielding any sort of military response against the United States under even the most wild of circumstances, is largely reliant upon the Venezuelans, who themselves are basically collapsing at the moment, and is fully open to American tourism. In fact, American tourists were going there anyway. They just simply went to Mexico or Jamaica or somewhere else and then took a flight to Cuba because they're allowed to do. The other countries never cared. The Europeans could go to and from Cuba already. Only in the United States could we not smoke a Cuban cigar, drink Cuban rum, or go see Cuba unless it was on an educational trip that was controlled by a handful of corporations that would charge you $2,000 a week. That's the only difference. Now they're more directly getting American tourists in there. That's the only difference. I don't have a problem with Cuba. I supported him on the Cuba deal, ending the embargo. I would strip back all regulations. I would completely normalize relations. I'd say I don't really care. I just don't care. Maybe there'd be fewer people trying to flee from Cuba if all that U.S. Coca-Cola money is flowing into Cuba. Win-win. Another Latin American state that's more stable than it was before. It's a good thing. We should keep this hemisphere as stable as we can. It's in our best interest, regardless of what you think about their political ideologies. You want to worry about commies, go worry about North Korea. That's actually a military threat capable of attacking our allies in the region. Worry about the North Koreans. Worry about Chinese hackers or something. Cuba's not hacking anyone. They barely have internet access. I'm not worried about the Cubans. Another thing I'll support Obama on, and this is the major defining feature of what he did right, was something that he actually didn't do at all. And I speak, of course, of getting out of the way on our oil and gas boom. Now, as a Democrat, somebody who was supported by a hell of a lot of environmentalists, Obama was under big pressure there for years to stop fracking. Stop it entirely, no fracking, no further extraction, ban all offshore drilling, ban this, ban that. He didn't do that. One of the best things that Obama ever did during the last 8 years was something that I would generally expect from a Republican, which is allowing energy exploration and exploitation, leading to a situation now where in the next decade or two, we're going to be a net energy exporter. Fuck the Middle East. We're not going to need their oil. We're not going to need anybody's gas. We're going to have plenty. We'll be exporting it. We're going to get, you don't even have a conception, by the way, of how rich we're going to get off of this. Especially if we take some of that revenue, we do invest in trying to develop better green energy technology. I'm all for that. Obama's insistence on green energy, if he had gotten out of the way and stripped back federal regulations on home solar, we'd be in an even bigger energy boom. He should have gone further. in rescinding government control over energy production. That's what he should have done. But at least in getting out of the way on fracking and so forth, yeah, it causes pollution. Yeah, it apparently causes earthquakes. At the same time, though, at least short term, there's not a whole lot else we can do. We're throttling our own capability to invest in green energy anyway by constantly buying oil and stuff from the Middle East rather than making our own. We put the screws to OPEC enough so that until now, they're not even throttling their own spigots to raise the oil prices by a few dollars per barrel. We completely screwed around with them. They had to keep up production. Otherwise, they'd be outcompeted very quickly by the United States. They had to collapse the oil prices as much as possible, let them fall down to some long-term equilibrium. They're the ones suffering from that. I feel just fine. So I'll give Obama credit for that. There's not a whole lot else I can give Obama credit for. He wasn't on the forefront of gay rights, which I do. I support that. He did nothing. All he did was stand back and not defend DOMA. That's all he did. And then when gay marriage went nationwide, what did he do? Oh, yeah, this is a great day for America. Oh, Democratic Party leading the way. No, it wasn't the Democratic Party leading the way. It was a bunch of advocacy groups and the Libertarian Party that led the way on gay marriage. The Democratic Party didn't embrace that as an issue until very recently. A handful of fringe candidates within the DNC embraced it. There were more log cabin Republicans for a while than there were Democrats talking about the issue. Don't try to screw around and revise history and pretend that you were some great warrior for gay rights. Hell, Trump is more pro-gay rights than Obama will ever be. Hilarious. What about abortion? What did Obama do about that? Nothing. What did he do when Texas decided to slap more limits on things? I think this is regrettable. He didn't attempt to do anything. By the way, that's another thing. Yeah, I go left on such issues. And then there are issues on which he's totally fucking out there, like the ACA. He says, oh, the ACA is great. More people have insurance. Yeah, that's great. It's shitty insurance and they're paying a lot more for it. The fact that you're subsidizing a bunch of impoverished individuals on the backs of people who were doing pretty well in the middle class, who now their jobs have been destroyed. You fucked the middle class. Obama's main legacy is, I fucked the American middle class in order to help a bunch of impoverished people get subsidized healthcare. That's essentially what he did. Millions of people in the middle class suffer in order for tens of millions of lower class individuals to get half-assed insurance. That's not even good, is still overpriced, still costs them a mint in many cases. In some states, there's no competition. The ACA was terribly made. The rollout was totally botched. And this is all in addition to, I think, the main thing that he's done that was the worst of all, which is the expansion of the American surveillance apparatus. To the point at which even neocons had to at least pretend to be interested in scaling back the activities of the NSA. Now, at the end of the day, did the Rand Pauls succeed or did the Mitch McConnells prevail? The Mitch McConnells prevailed, which was terrible. The Rands should have been the ones fixing the issue and we wouldn't have any further problem at all because mass surveillance simply wouldn't exist anymore. We don't need it. The former head of the NSA agrees that we don't need it, that it's like searching through a haystack to find one needle. It's brutally ineffective. It's extremely expensive. It's retarded. But Obama's all in support of this. And then you have, by the way, the hypocrisy of people like Obama, or people on the left, so-called, in general. Say, oh, Trump's going to be dangerous because he can launch drone strikes and conduct surveillance and totalitarianism. You were doing that for years. And you pretended that there was no problem, that the government was beyond question. Now, of course, the other party's going to be in charge. You're all worried. Well, pity for you. Hopefully he conducts surveillance on some of you so that you know how it feels. You're conducting it on every other American. Why should you be any different? Fuck yourself. So Obama's legacy is shit to me. Obama failed as a president. Just like Bush failed. Just like Bubba Bill failed. Just like Daddy Bush failed. The last time we had a president who wasn't a failure was Ronald Reagan, and he was largely just a cult of personality individual who happened to reign over a jobs boom. Not through any significance of anything that he himself did, other than freezing the increase of government spending. He wasn't even a cutter of spending. He wasn't even a paleocon. Still a neocon. All he did was freeze government spending increases for a few years. That's all he did. That's his claim to fame, that and pretending he was somehow responsible for the end of the Cold War when the Soviets were fucking themselves into oblivion to begin with and would have fallen anyway. I don't care about that either. But by the way, people on the left, they did this with Bubba, and they're going to do this with Obama. They're going to try to make him out to be some sort of messianic, larger-than-life figure, and all the mistakes he made in retrospect were natural to make at the time. They're going to try to revise history to make it look like he was some sort of great president. He's not. Not even remotely. Piss-poor president. We haven't had a great president in a very, very long time. We haven't had a good president since the middle of the Cold War. Since the 1960s. The last time we had a good president, we were in the 1950s and 60s with Ike and JFK. Those are the last good presidents that we had. The last halfway honest president we had was Jimmy Carter, who was an economic, miserable failure. At least he was honest, though. Combative, yeah. A little bit out there. True, especially if you read his UFO sighting stuff. But at least he was honest. In fact, a little too honest. That's why he didn't get reelected. That and who his challenger was. Obama's legacy is meaningless. He gets up for this farewell address. Oh, we're not a post-racial society yet. Well, we might have been if it hadn't been for your constant fucking race baiting. It's another part of your legacy. Constantly trying to use political wedge issues, not realizing, I guess, because you're too dumb to realize it, that you're whipping up the entire nation to essentially racial warfare or something. That's another part of your legacy. Bush screwed everyone. Black, white, didn't really matter. He fucked us all over. Obama pretends, though, that he cares about the inner cities. He doesn't. They're falling apart. They've gotten far more violent under Obama than they ever were before. Hell, most violent crime in this country has been sliding since the middle of the 90s. It's gone down and down and down. There's no gun crime epidemic in the United States. That's his other fixation. Oh, we need gun control because crime's too high. It's not going to work. It's not working anywhere where it's already been imposed by states and municipalities. It fails. It does the opposite of what you intend it to do. There's a reason that he wants gun control. It's because the more disarmed people are, the easier they are generally to control. It's a long-term strategy of the neoliberals and the neocons. They don't stand in the way of... They don't try to repeal gun control. When have the Republicans suggested repealing gun control? Not simply not adding new gun control, but actually rescinding gun control further that clearly doesn't do anything. They haven't in a long-ass time. Bush let the assault rifle ban expire, and that's about all he did. Some great pro-gun warrior he was. Oh, champion of the Second Amendment. The Republican Party hasn't championed the Second Amendment in a long time. Libertarian movement, constitutionalist movement, yeah, they understand the Second Amendment. Republican Party, Trump appears willing to rescind some gun control. If he does that, he'll be more pro-second than any Republican president of the last half-century. And the NRA and similar groups would best be recognizing him as some sort of saint if he does that. He'll be certainly on their memos as number one recent Republican. They'll abandon all the retard McCains and McConnells and so forth. He's saying if you don't vote for Trump, then just get the fuck out of the NRA or something like that. Obama's legacy's dirt. I hope Trump will do better. But who was it today? The dude there, one of the people in their confirmation hearing, I can't remember, he was one of the former soldiers there, one of the former generals or something, the one that served as cavalry. I didn't know we still had that in Germany and so forth. It was like #1 grad at West Point in his class and stuff. I can't recall his name. Not Mattis, but the other dude, the other former general or whatever he was. I was talking about, oh, Snowden misled the American people. Well, you know, I'm not going to support his appointment then. If you're going to talk like that about somebody who kept the American government honest, fuck yourself. Hopefully Trump cans you and finds somebody else. By the way, though, it is interesting. The left will still spin it as, Trump under control of Russia. Oh, but his appointee here is talking about how bad Russia is and how they're misusing Edward Snowden. Okay, makes perfect sense again. Yeah, we're going to be combative with Russia, but we're controlled by Russia. Okay, makes perfect sense to me. No, Obama's legacy means nothing to me. Obama means nothing to me. Doesn't mean anything to anybody. He failed. Get over it. His above 50% approval right now that started during the election, it's because it was the Kasich effect. He was being compared to people who were known and who were disliked, Hillary and Trump. And Trump still has low approval, 5 points higher than approval of the media, so I'm not sure why they glowingly report on this and overlook the real facts of the case. Admittedly, not a well-received individual because the media has called him Hitler for a good 6 months. I'm not surprised. So when you compare Obama, who's basically a boring failure, with someone who's expected to be the next great disaster of all mankind, yeah, he's going to look good by comparison in the minds of a large proportion of the population. Yeah, he's going to look sane. He's going to look like a peaceful man, a well-spoken man, an intelligent man. He's none of these things. Speaking skills have broken down so severely since he stopped campaigning. For the first 5 minutes of his farewell address, he sounded pretty good. And I was like, oh, well, where was this Obama for the last 4 years? This Obama makes sense and says something that's not a wedge issue once in a while. But then he segued right back into the wedge issues and blaming everybody else for his shortcomings, and it was a failure too. That's about all. Peace out.